Hey, what's up, everybody? Well, talk to you a little bit about what I also spoke with the defense a little bit today. Usually after a game, not usually, all the time after a game, win or lose, I do an after-action kind of review with them. And so three of the questions, or three of the words that I use are what, so what, and now what. And so the what is what happened in the performance. What was the game, where are we at? So those would be some of the things that we'd hit on. It might be, we created a takeaway. We had no penalties for the first time since I don't know when. We could, talk about some red zone things that I liked. We could talk about, didn't like, the perimeter run game. Those would have been some of the things. That's the what. And then so what is, all right, so what did we learn from, this performance or where it was? And that would be an example. Like, you can take week one and usually throw a lot of the stuff out the window. It's usually a wild weekend, which for the NFL it was. So in our opening game last year, there was 50 pass attempts against us. And in this year's opening game, there was 27 pass attempts. And you say, well, that's different, So what do you learn from that, and where do you go? Just to say, hey, every time you go, things are change, and that's what I love about our defense. We've got a deep crew. We've got a bunch of safeties and DBs that we can match up on different styles, and that's important to do. And you've heard me say that in the NFL, like this week you may have to do this week you may have to do this. Well, sometimes it's within the game that you have to change and the plan to go. So I'll certainly see that. And then now what, you have the information, and what do you go and do with it? So it's a good way for me to stay connected with them. What, so what, and now what? And, with the group here, one of the things that I do like having so many players back and adding a few to the fold is we have a very clear picture of how we want to play and what we can do together and how do we feature the guys in those special roles. So I think, to me, heading in, that's a huge advantage. So with that, I'll open it up to you guys and we can let it rip.
Dan, David Moore, Dallas Morning News. When you lose a key player on the other side of the ball, as you did in Dak, and you're already kind of looked to as a farther ahead at this stage of the season, do you have to talk to the unit at all about don't go outside what you do, just keep doing what we're doing, or how do you balance?
Yeah, I think you have the right message, because any team, there's going to be obstacles that come in the way, and that's on the field, that could be off the field. And just as a reminder, every situation is winnable, every single one of them. And so it is not just exactly like you had suggested, David, not to get outside of our realm. We've got to do our job impeccably well, and that's over and over again. And we'll certainly miss, I think you're referring to Dak, and he's such a strong leader on our group. And I was also referring to on the defensive side with J-Ron, and so he is a extremely valuable member of the defense. So it's not just replacing one position. I've asked him to do more things as a ball player than I've almost asked anybody through the years. He plays safety, he plays nickel, he plays linebacker, he calls it for us. So he's an important part of what we do as well. So when these adversity moments are going to come, there is some competitive energy that comes with that, like it's coming at some point. We all know this, the adversity, the moments, the injuries, the on or off the field. And there is some energy and some thriving when those moments happen, because it does allow other people to have prove-it moments. And some of the best competitive times that I've been around are when you do have to prove it. And so those moments are now born based out of that. And so I'm certain we'll miss JK, and I'm certain that we'll miss Dak. There's no doubt about it. Their impact goes beyond just what they are as a ball player. They're leaders to the other guys, but there also is both of them are going to be back, and in that space there's going to be some opportunities for people to grow and get stronger. And when they do come back, we'll have some other players that will have gone through it and really have risen up to those spots. So until they do come back, there'll be other people will have chances to lead and move up, and that's always a good thing to me.
Skyler Dixon with DAP. You mentioned the perimeter run game. Was setting the edge the biggest problem with the run defense, or what did you see overall?
Yeah, I would say that would probably be the one to me. I wouldn't say it's all setting it, but that would have been the one. It wasn't interior runs, that hurt us on some of the explosive runs that they had, and certainly give them credit too. We're pretty strong internally and pressures to go, so trying to get out on the edge, and they were able to do that some. So that's something that I know is fixable and that we will for sure.
Todd Archer with ESPN. The big plays allowed in the passing game, that was an issue for you, I think, a little bit last year. What do you do to rectify that, or
Well,
do you live with it?
I guess I agree and disagree with you sometime. I thought these guys are pretty good. And so I think we had 4 explosive passes. The first one was on a screen, but one came on a 2-minute to Julio. That was a good ball. But there was also, they took plenty of deep shots, that I thought, guys stood up. I saw there was a good play on Diggs, had 2 or 3 of them to his side. So at the end of it, I know that's important, but we are going to play aggressive. That's part of our style and how we play. Only leaving the game with 1 takeaway didn't make me happy, but it was a hell of a play by Donovan Wilson. So I was actually, to be honest with you, more concerned that they let up some of the run yards and losing out than I was on some of the explosive passes. Sorry to mess your story up. Just one guy's opinion.
Clarence Hill for West Tucker. How did you hold up in the middle? Behind, because we look at the rushing yards, you think, oh, okay, they didn't hold up well, and you just said that they most
Yeah,
run
I would say,
outside.
yeah, when you go back and look at it, you're going to see more that go outside, and a toss play on a 3rd down, a jet sweep that got outside. So some of the ones, it was a 3rd down and 2. We took a shot to blitz it inside. Their history had been inside style runs, and when you get outside, and you get for 15, and those hurt. And so we got to make sure we can get those exactly, dialed down like we'd like to be. But it wasn't internally that went. So the push wasn't from inside. It was, obviously losing some gaps outside. Yep, or some pullers, and just, they're getting the big guys out on the perimeter, and how do you go defeat those? And so it'll be some good stuff for us to work through this week.
Cal.
Calvin Watkins, Dallas Morning News. How do you replace Curse? You got a lot of young kids there.
Yeah, it won't be with one man, that's for sure. And Malik Hooker and Donovan Wilson, I really have, having those 3 kind of in concert together, that's been a big piece of it. And certainly Mukuamu and Bell, are guys that have, safety ability to, play down the box and play outside. So those would be, some of the ones that we'll have.
Big Long, Dallas Cowboys Radio Network. Just Anthony Barr played a little over half the snaps. Your impression of his understanding of the defense in that game and just where he is kind of.
Yeah, I was actually, I felt the shift turn probably the week, because he played some in the Seattle game, if you remember, in the last preseason game, and I felt that shift was the time, because if you open up his notebook to see details, like all the way through, good questions to go. And so the first couple weeks, yes, I'm getting that, and then all of a sudden I felt like that practice week, we had a couple good practice. If you remember inside, I can't remember exactly what we call them, but we had big turnout on the inside night practices, and that's when I said, he's there. I saw him playing fast, going for it. And so since that time, since those practices, I felt like he really has the clear understanding of how to go. But I thought going in, it was important not to miss one step for him on the way. He knew a lot of football, obviously, and has played well. So I was pleased with where he was at.
Michael Gelton, Dallas Morning News. It seemed like the Buccaneers were making a concerted effort to attack the perimeter, specifically the right side of your defense. Would you agree? And if so, does some measure of onus fall on Trayvon just to make sure his physicality responds to that challenge?
Yeah, I'd have to go look back at that. I can't say for certain that's true right or left on that, but I can say perimeter side to go, because sometimes it may be field oriented or not. In other words, a formation is set usually to a field of a passing strength, and so if there's a crack block and someone down, usually it's more to a field. So I didn't sense that it was one or another, but that's something for sure that, like most things, I'll always look at.
Dan Jory, Epstein, USA Today. Can you take us through what you saw from Micah on the 2 sacks? And something he's talked a lot about is improving his game mentally this offseason. How, if at all, did that impact those sacks?
A couple things. Well, I'd say you saw him play, 2 different positions, some from backer, some from end. And I thought down in the red zone, that was a good combination of things. One, a change up in the coverage to just, sometimes it just has to be a count, just to make the quarterback have to go somewhere else. So that was a good one. I thought it was a learning moment. We had talked this week about how to tackle a quarterback this low differently, because we had some fouls in the preseason. Sam had, I I think 2. Basham had 1. And how do you hit, even if you're going low, how do you get to the knees? So I thought he demonstrated also how to do that and come through. But on the second one, first one he went outside, the second one up and under on a stunt. So it just shows his quickness off the ball, to beat somebody to the punch. But getting those kind of stops in the red zone on back-to-back series, that was big because the one, I think, came off a sudden change moment where it was about at the 20, 23-yard line. And so to get a stop there to hold him to a field goal, I thought that was a big part in the game in the first half.
Newy Scruggs, NBC5. Can you speak to some of the challenge you have this week coming up? Bengals lost a tough one yesterday. Burrow's got some targets to throw to, and then they got that big one in Nixon.
Yep, should be 2 pretty pissed off teams, so it should make for some fun as we're going through it. And my early impressions, I saw how talented obviously the quarterback was. Just throw for 70%, this many touchdowns, this many yards. I think Chase, and his ability, his run after the catch, his strength, the catching radius, that speaks for itself. And Boyd's, inside in the slot, and Higgins the size to go. So all those from the passing weapon side, I felt like we were just talking about that last week. So that's kind of the fun part, and a good, strong runner with Mixon to go. So scheme-wise, it's different from what they've had. They've, don't do the same things as Tampa, but from a skill standpoint, I would say there's a lot of carryover from the stylistic of, players and how they can feature guys like that.
0 penalties for your defense last night. How rare is that? And
someone should definitely look that up because it's probably rare for me. The way I played or tried to coach defense for a while, but I know some combative ones will happen from time to time. But what I was pleased about, poise, no pre-snap, and we knew how much we needed to, create takeoff and get off the ball to try to affect the quarterback. So having that kind of discipline, that was a real factor. And certainly playing at home helps, where they have to work on silent and go through that. But to still come out, no holding, no DPIs, no offsides, I thought that speaks to the level of discipline that the guys are wanting to work towards. So that was one of the things that I noted this morning.
John Michaud, The Athletic. I think Micah played all 62 defensive snaps. Did you think he was good to go for all 62? And is there any part of it where it's like, hey, even if he's a little gassed, I'll take an 85% Micah Parsons because of just how dynamic he is?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say it's one that actually I was pleased with defensively. I felt like we could have kept going. And so I thought that speaks to their conditioning, the way they've practiced to go. So I wouldn't say it'll be every game that he'll play all of them. I think it was probably of those, 20 or 25, were probably at defensive end and the others were at backer. So it's probably easier to do at backer than it is if you did all of them at defensive line. But he's pretty fit, and I would say you can tell the work that he put in at training camp. But I didn't have a sense to say, hey, maybe it's sub to here, where we're going. And certainly in the fourth quarter, some of the drives were quick to go. There was 3s and 4s, but not only him, but I thought a lot of the guys really came through, and there wasn't a time where I felt like they looked gassed or needed to. And so at most of the positions were rolling. I didn't know that he had all of them, but it doesn't surprise me in that setting yet last night.
Christy Scales, Cowboys Radio, those weekly tough decisions you have on who's up and who's down.
Right.
You went long on the line and
Yeah.
a bit shorter at safety. Was that a particular matchup thing, or early in the season you got to help the big guys?
Just, kind of come in, we just try to make the decision to say this is likely a team, that was going to be drop back heavy. So we thought more pass rushers to go, more of that. So that's where the decision came. It didn't play out in that way, but that was the thought heading into the game to say, hey, this one will likely come down to the end. We want to make sure we have enough rushers to go and play it out. If we had to play, 70 plays and, play a game that was similar stylistic to last year, that we wanted to make sure at the end of the game we had enough to go. Because I felt last year at the end, I wanted to make sure I had enough rushers to go finish it out.
Dan, I know we have so much practical stuff to talk about, but quick theoretical question for you. You talk so much about how you work to figure out how to feature your defensive players and how in another life we've got ideas for the offense too. If you were going to do the equivalent on offense for an offense that needed a jump start, how would you go about that, or what are some of the ways you would try and look for positions?
I think much like I would do it on defense to say, you know, these are the things that that I've seen you do really well. This is some of the things that you've shown, you know, in practice or on tape, and also looking into their, you know, whether you're a free agent or a draft pick, kind of the same thing to say, I could see him doing that same exact thing here. And so that's what we try to do defensively with the players. So I think I would just take that approach.
All right, let's wrap it up. And Kellen will be right in.
All right. Anybody else? Last one?
I got one.
Go.
Bonus one?
Go ahead, Michael.
Michael was, yeah.
Leighton was discussing the fourth quarter reverse that he kind of snuffed and described it as an example of just him being in the rhythm over the course of the game, having a feel for it, and responding.
Yep.
Over the course of your time with him, is he a player that is at his best when he's playing kind of heavier snap count because of that rhythm?
That's a good question. He does put a lot in from the studying time, and I would say I thought in this game I thought he really played well. You know, he was one of our, you know, surest tacklers and made some good plays. He had a, you know, as part of the short yardage stop, the fourth down or the third down stop in the 4 minutes. So, but I'd kind of seen that from him, you know, all through the preseason. I felt that he was really ready, and so. You know, that's why it was difficult and it's a tough loss, because I did feel like we were really ready to, you know, make some plays and do some things. And Leighton was a good example of that, where I thought he was, you know, when you're really sharp and you're really feeling it like you're on your game, I feel like he's in that pocket right now. All right, you guys have a good one.